I'm JQ Louise, the host of Voices of Luxury with JQ. Listen on Spotify, Apple, and everywhere you get your podcasts. We have new episodes every Tuesday. Okay, so we're back here on Voices of Luxury with JQ, and I'm so happy that we have Paul Chevalier from Whispering Angel with us here today. And he's actually in one of my favorite destinations ever. He's in Provence, so I know we'll hear lots of insider tips and everything about two of my favorite things, rosé and the south of France. So thanks for coming on today, Paul.
Okay, well, bonjour. Happy to be here and good to see you again.
Yeah, so maybe to kick things off, I'd love to, have you kind of introduce yourself, tell everybody, a little bit on your backstory. And then I know I'd love to hear more about kind of the origin story of Whispering Angel.
Sure. Well, obviously, Paul Chevalier from Château Esclans. I've been in the wine industry, the wine business, pretty much all of my life. So I am American. I actually grew up in New England, and I went to school in France, and that's where I began my career. And for the last coming up on 20 years, I've been working on this project, which is Château d'Esclans, which most people don't know the name, but they certainly would know the name of Whispering Angel. And Whispering Angel was the brainchild of this gentleman named Sascha Lachine, who I had known from Bordeaux. So we all connected about 20 years ago, and as we say in French, on y va. So there goes the story. And it wasn't easy, trust me, from the early days. Very few people were drinking rosé 20 years ago.
Yeah, especially in the States.
Yeah, in the States, and actually, and lots of other, maybe in the south of France and Provence, yes, because it's the birthplace of rosé. But once you had left the Côte d'Azur and sunny Provence, rosé was sort of an afterthought. To be honest, it was also didn't have the best reputation because rosés from Provence are not new. We've been making rosé in Provence for almost 2,000 years, but there was other sort of rosé styles which were created over the years. I can think of being a little bit older. Back in like the 70s and early 80s, there were these brands called like Lancers and Matus, which were quite big brands. And then obviously the invention of white Zinfandel blush, which kind of blew up, which really has nothing to do with the styles of rosé we produce in Provence. So rosé had a little bit of a bad reputation. Let's say cheap and cheerful to be nice. I won't say sweet, but it certainly was very sweet. And that has all changed with everything we're doing with Whispering Angel.
Amazing. I know. I mean, Whispering Angel has always been one of my favorite rosés. And, over the years, you see, the brand in the coolest places. I know the last time you and I had lunch, we got to talk about some of those cool places, like, whether it's in St. Moritz and ski season at all the, white turf and snow polo and things like that. And then, at lots of different F1 events and all kinds of very high profile events. Like, what do you think has been the role in, and you're also on the marketing side and the branding side and things like that. So how do you think, the perception of rosé and then also, Château d'Esclans, has really evolved over 20 years? Like, what has been that evolution?
It's actually kind of safe to say, but I think we're just kind of beginning, to be honest. It sounds like 20 years is a long time. For the wine business, it's really not. So as I said, the challenge was how to get the product out there, and we call that liquid to lips. So in the early days, going back to 2006 and 7 and 8 and 9, in those years, it was about connecting with consumers, and to your point, being in the right places. And I think Sascha Lachine had a nose, for no pun intended, a nose for those type of things, of understanding where to go, where would be the places to be. We began in the U.S., in places like Nantucket, the Hamptons in the winter season in Florida, Miami, because I was living in Miami, I still am actually, and Palm Beach and so forth. And then it became also more of the international scene. So I'll give you an example. This is sort of the genius of Sascha Lachine. He says, Paul, we need to go to the island of Moustique. And I said, oh, where's Moustique? He said, oh, it's a little island in the Caribbean. So what do you want me to do on Moustique? Oh, it's a private island and there's a few, people have houses. There's not very many hotels. And you need to go and meet with this gentleman. His name is Ali. He's a French gentleman. He's the baker. So I said, okay, well, why am I going to go meet with Ali, the baker? He says, well, the baker, because it's the private island, the baker makes bread and croissants and things that he delivers to everybody's house. So you're going to go meet him. This is before the season kicks in the Caribbean. So
he knows
before Thanksgiving-ish, November or so, before everybody shows up for the winter. The snowbirds, as we call them. And so I met Ali, and we went from house to house in the early days with a magnum of Whispering Angel And it was almost like a milkman. Sort of,
Yeah, I was going to say, you're the milkman for
the
rosé.
milk on people's door. It was the Agno Whispering Angel with a little bow and a little note and so forth. Lo and behold, 6-9 months later, everybody on the island of Moustique is drinking Whispering Angel with lots of famous people like Mick Jagger and so forth. It was a little bit about connecting and understanding where to go. And that is really the marketing story of Château d'Esclans. It wasn't really about advertising and so forth. It was about being in the right places, the right accounts, specifically on-premise, like restaurants and the best hotels. And then once you were able to get your wine listed, hence Whispering Angel, in those accounts, is how do you connect with people? So as time went on, we spent a lot of time what we call doing activations. And activations work, how can you associate wine, in our case, rosé, with an event? So the events went from, I wouldn't say necessarily sporting, but, being at the tennis, being at the golf and so forth. And I don't know, music and polo and so forth. Lots of outdoorsy things, because I think rosé, because you drink it chilled, is kind of more of it certainly suits to the outdoorsy kind of events. And having a little Whispering Angel bar. And lo and behold, people would come. And if you give somebody a glass and it's good, they'll come back for a second. Exactly. I think that's the other part of this. It is not just the name and the marketing, it's really about the quality. And I think that the taste profile of Whispering Angel was a little bit different to many rosés. A lot of rosés can be a little light, let's say wishy-washy, not much is going on. And Whispering Angel has a lot of flavor. It has no sugar. It's totally dry, but very
much more complex and rich than a lot of other rosés.
Yeah, more of a mouthfeel, let's say. Yeah. And I think because of that, I just connected with lots and lots of people. And I would say maybe, I don't know, in the early days, obviously I'm not a millennial, but I'm going to guess that probably, back in 2006 or 2007, probably over 50% of my clientele in the US were millennials. But again, remember that was 20 years ago. So it's sort of millennials who have grown up, right? So sort of from 25 or 30 now to 45 or 50, 20 years later. Yeah. And they've been a very loyal clientele. So we're very fortunate to, knock on wood. And I think that's also the magic of Whispering Angel specifically, and maybe Rosé from Provence, is it is a fantastic product to introduce people into the wine world, right? And wine can be intimidating, whether, especially some of the, I don't know, more obscure places or more complex of Bordeaux and Tuscanies and Burgundies and Napa and so forth. And not everybody grows up in the vineyards. So how would you know if you didn't, someone didn't teach you, whether it was where you grew up or your parents or in school? How would you know? And I think Whispering Angel checks all the boxes in the sense it's approachable and it's easy to understand. You don't need to be necessarily a master sommelier or master winemaker or something to understand it. Easy to drink. And that's why people keep coming back. So that's really, I think the story of Whispering Angel was just a combination of those things together and a lot of what we call shoe leather, being out in the street, meeting people, converting people, say, try my wine. And lo and behold, coming up on 20 years later.
Wow. I know. Well, it's just such a well-known, brand and, a house of wines. I guess, we all know Whispering Angel, obviously. It's so popular, but there are other wines too. There's other, and I, at our lunch in Boston, I got to try a few that, I've never tried. I know some of the, smaller batch and, smaller release wines and things like that. So, where do you see, those, the higher end catalog from Château d'Esclans? Like, where do you see that kind of out in the marketplace these days? Like, what are your
evolving? Yeah, I think that's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. So the original vision of Sacha Lachine had left Bordeaux, came from a Bordeaux family, and had a property called Prairie de Chine in Margaux and sold that and then moved to Provence. Everybody thought he was a little crazy, to be honest. And he said, I want to make the greatest rosé in the world. And I think we did. The problem was the market wasn't ready for it 20 years ago. So I think Whispering Angel was a good sort of foot in the door, entry level sort of wine. Today, things have changed because there's more acceptation for rosé, different price points and so forth. So the wines, the other expressions of rosé which we produce are not new. There's, yes, to your point, they're small batch. So and most of them come from the estate because we have, now we have about 200 hectares of vineyards planted, which is actually quite a bit. So we're able to make those styles of wines from the estate. The question is continuing to connect with a clientele of consumers who are now ready to move up.
It's that next step.
To that next step or two above. And to be honest, it's kind of a mixture of people who are used to drinking fine wine, luxury wine, I guess, which could be as I said earlier, Bourgogne, Bordeaux, Burgundy, Napa, Champagne, or those types of things, right? In our case, probably closer to whites or sparkling. Doesn't have a lot to do with red, but that also took a little bit of time. So I think that the next phase will be a lot of continued education and training. And also these other expressions have a lot more to do with, I'm going to say, perhaps sophisticated cuisine and gastronomy. That is the big difference, because Whispering Angel ultimately is extremely easy to drink. It's I'm not going to say I invented rosé all day, but I think it's been oversaid, rosé all day, rosé. So I'm not going to say rosé all day, but it has a lot of day drinking.
Yeah.
And
and at these events and things like that, where you just have a glass with you, you're not necessarily eating at the same time.
Well, although it is food, Whispering Angel is really food friendly. It goes with many types of cuisines and so forth. On the lighter side, perhaps.
Yeah.
The other expressions really start to go into the world of fine wine and fine cuisine. And I think that's where it's interesting. I think we need to try to figure out how we're going to associate ourselves with that world. And to be honest, is a lot of this sommelier community, if you were to go to, hypothetically, I'm not sure, some sort of Michelin star restaurant or something, in general, you're probably not going to find a lot of rosé on the wine list yet. And I think that's our next sort of mission, or our next, responsibility, next job, is to continue to convert that community of people who are perhaps a little bit more wine savvy, that rosé can be more serious and can hold up to our counterparts of other wines around the world. That is, that's where we're like Christopher Columbus sailing off, and we're going to go off, because that doesn't exist.
No. Well, I mean, you rarely see a rosé as, a wine pairing, on a tasting menu. Maybe if there's, with a amuse-bouche or, some kind of starter or something like that, maybe. But I think, typically, the sommeliers, they lean towards, so many other things. Yeah.
And things perhaps which are, I don't want to necessarily say esoteric or a little bit more obscure, but in a lot of cases they are, which again, I'm not criticizing other people's wines. I'm just saying that
it's just
today with
just you don't see the rosés in those, on those menus.
Because they probably 20 years ago, the quality probably wasn't that great. So, but now that's all changed. And I think that with the complexity, the styles of these new expressions, in our case, we use a lot of barrel fermentation to make them, and also old vine, essentially Grenache and roll, which is Vermentino. We're able to achieve wines which have a lot of power and mouthfeel. And trust me, I truly believe that they go with amazing cuisine, including, some of our cuvées, the one called Garous, which is the sort of our tête de cuvée, goes with, for those who eat red meat, certainly goes with red meat, from, filet mignon to baby lamb chops to duck to and all those other types of dishes. So why not, as we say in French, pourquoi pas, why not have a rosé if it holds up to delivers, or over delivers in our case, and gives you all the pleasure and satisfaction? That's what was missing. Yeah. And the beauty of rosé, speaking of, is we were chatting earlier, in France, it's been really hot this summer, actually in the US as well. So I personally have a difficult time drinking big red wines when it's hot.
Yeah. It's just too much. Like especially, when you're eating outside, when it's a beautiful night, and even though it's so hot, I'd rather have a nice chilled glass of rosé.
Yeah. And in the case of cuisine, though, I do like fine cuisine when in the summer. I like fine cuisine when it's hot. So what are you going to do? And that's the challenge. So now we have a legitimate option to sort of replace the red wine in certain scenarios. And that's also pretty revolutionary, because to be honest, there's a lot of white wines I love white wine. It just don't really cut the bill. You wouldn't have like a Sancerre or Cloudy Bay or something with beef. It doesn't really work.
Nope.
But you certainly could have these rosés. And so I think that's actually pretty cool. So that is our next challenge, is, let's say, the next 20 years, the direction that we will be going. It won't necessarily be me. Hopefully, I'll knock on wood, I'll be alive, but it's the next generation. I think that's important. So, and as we say, Rome wasn't built in a day. So this is going to take a lot of time. It was interesting, we're in London doing a vertical tasting with Sacha Lachine, and earlier this spring, I think it was in March or so, to the trade and sommeliers and wine press and wine merchants. And what he said was really interesting. He says, we're not trying to change the world. We're just trying to get the word out there.
Yeah,
and if you like it, then please drink it. And
once people have, it goes back to the, you give someone one glass, if the quality is there and they enjoy it, then they'll come back again.
Yeah, and
You
I
know,
think
they just
that's
getting the
interesting.
word out.
So there's more and more acceptation for these, I don't want to call them prestige cuvées, better cuvées,
Yeah.
small batch cuvées. And Provence, again, we're not the only ones that are making these styles, but there's also very new. So there's quite a revolution going on in Provence, and we can be very proud of it. Whispering Angel sort of was leading, is
Hmm.
still leading the pack. But just keep in mind, it was never necessarily about Whispering Angel, but Whispering Angel was in French, we say fait accompli, was sort of what was the locomotive that
Yeah,
drove the whole thing, which is great because all of a sudden rosé became a big deal.
exactly. Oh, rosé is definitely a big deal. So you mentioned that the harvest is starting a little bit early this year. So what does that look like? You know, if it's starting next week, like you said, like
Starting next,
what happened?
I mean, slowly starting next week. There's a couple of places that usually we start picking the vines which need to be harvested the soonest are either when they're really young, because young vines don't have deep roots, or some places that are a little warmer, like in the valley or sandy soil. So we'll start, but it'll be a slow start next week. I mean, the beauty of Provence is it is extremely consistent year after year because there's abundant sunshine. We
Mhm.
actually had quite a bit of rain in the spring, so we're not really lacking water in Provence. And it's just a question of what day do you pick? Is it give or take 2 or 3 days? It's always around that time of year anyway. What the vintage will be like is very early to tell. I have
Mhm.
a feeling it could be something like 2023, which is on the warmer side, but we'll see. We'll see. But I'm sure, number one, it'll be good. And number two, it's going to be very special because it's our 20th vintage. So no
That's
matter
like
what, it's going to be special.
so exciting. That's amazing. I know it's crazy. I mean, 20 years of Whispering Angel, it's like, you know, it's so well known. And, you know, I'm always so excited whenever I, you know, see a little Whispering Angel bar at one of these special events. It's, you know, it just brings a smile, you know, smile to your face, honestly. So I guess, you know, what else are you excited for this year? I mean, you know, it's the 20th vintage. So like you know, what's getting you excited about that? Like,
Well, we're ramping up to a lot of different things. As you know, and obviously we have this alliance with Moët Hennessy, which is fantastic. So now we're expanding our distribution throughout the world with the Moët Hennessy being the sort of the luxury company for wine, champagnes, and
yeah.
spirits and so forth, which is a fantastic alliance through things like Formula One, which
Right.
will continue on and so forth. But I think next year will be, I mean, can't let the cat out of the bag, but there will be a special celebration label and so forth to talk a little bit about that. And I think the goal is to continue to connect. And that is where we need to play we already do, but I think we need to play a bigger role. As I said, I think that rosé is ideal for recruitment into the world of wine. And I'm thinking about younger consumers. There's a lot of press and hype and news out that younger people are drinking less alcohol, less wine, and so
Yep.
forth, which is to a certain point is true. Although I've seen some recent studies that says it's swinging back in the other direction.
Exactly. Well, I saw that because as Gen Z, you know, gets a little bit older, like, you know, Gen Z, they're not all 20 years old anymore. They're
No.
25. They're, you
Yeah.
know, so as they get older, it's kind of back to what, you know, the numbers were for millennials when we were that age. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, I feel like that's changing too as they get older.
So we'll see. But this is one of my little pet projects as well, is to continue to educate and focus on the future. And I
Mhm.
think that, as I said, Whispering Angels is fantastic. I'll give you just one example. I was fortunate. I met the gentleman, Robert Mondavi. You know, he lived in Napa and obviously no longer with us. But just think about, you know, what he was doing. He's a very charismatic gentleman and all of his life with his wife, they would cook for people. Come to my house for dinner. I'm going to feed you some Italian food because he's more of an
Yeah.
Italian immigrant. That's his family. And try my Napa Valley Cabernet and so forth. He wasn't the only one, but he certainly had a big part. And lo and behold, but do you really think back in, I don't know, 1965 and 1970 that anybody knew what Napa Valley Cabernet was? No. So, I mean, this is a whole process, but I guarantee this is going to continue. Rosé from Provence is not going away. Brands like Whispering Angel and others will continue to grow. And it's obviously the conversation is more about the US, but Whispering Angels is available now in over 100 countries around the world. I think the potential is, we were just chatting about Asia earlier this week. And there's so much to do. I just need more time, energy to go and visit all these places
Yeah.
to convert people like the Marco Polo or Rosé and go convert some people. And
Yeah.
there's lots of, and that's just one example. Brazil, we'll be in Brazil there's a big show called Pro Wine in early October this year. So we'll be at that. So we're not throwing in the towel. by any means. It's more about the checkered flag.
Yeah.
The Formula One and that. Yeah. So I can see the checkered flag.
Awesome. No, so exciting. I mean, I know I'll definitely be following along and trying to, you know, with the whole process on that, because I love rosé so much. But I also love, you know, where rosé comes from, the, you know, Provence and everything like that. So that whole area of France is literally my favorite. So, maybe we can kind of switch gears a little bit, because a lot of our listeners are, well, actually all of our listeners are luxury travelers and very well traveled. So, I'd love to kind of get your insider's take on, what are some of your favorite areas of Provence, towns or hotels or restaurants, kind of whatever you want.
Well, first of all, I would say is obviously everybody loves to go to the coast and, the Cannes, the Nices and the Saint-Tropez and so forth. But the backcountry, which is actually more where we are, we call it the Auvergne, the Gorge de Verdun. There's lots of countryside to see in the back and lots of little villages, which are really cool to do. So I would certainly recommend spending some time, not at the ocean, but spending some time in the backcountry, just driving around from village to village.
I mean, some beautiful roads too, like beautiful. It's such a nice drive. I mean, whether like kind of no matter where you're coming from, either from Monaco or Cannes or Nice or anywhere. And then once you head up, into the hills,
it's not very far.
Beautiful drive.
It's all pretty close. And the second thing I recommend is, we joke about this a lot because a lot of people in the U.S. specifically come to visit. I understand why, because of, 4th of July and summertime holidays and stuff. But to be honest, it's so busy. I really recommend, and the weather is always spectacular in Provence. So why not come to visit in, Easter time? Why not come to visit in June? And definitely September, because September we're harvesting. And after Labor Day is my favorite time because the water is warmed up. There's a lot less traffic, a lot less busy. There's a very famous, if you're into classic sailing, which is sort of like the early days. Yeah, the Voile de Saint-Tropez, which is like the early days of the America's Cup before it went to the the foils and come out.
Wow.
The old school JQ's sailing vessels and so forth. So there's a regatta that lasts. It's usually the last week of September, and that is really cool. So there's a lot of things that go on. I mean, you have the vineyards. Think about this. You have so much going on. We haven't even developed the eno-tourism, right? So think about what Napa used to look like before we had all the winery visits. There's not necessarily a lot of that. We do at Château d'Esclans. We're geared to doing that, but most people don't. Then you have everything along the coastline, which is, from Monaco to Nice to Antibes to Cannes, and that whole thing, right? Then you have the backcountry. And then you have like towns like Aix-en-Provence, and you can go. So you could literally spend 3 weeks or a month just going from spot to spot. And we're so close to Italy. So if you want to drive over, then before you know it, you're in Italy, you're on the coast there as well. You could be in Portofino, so close. So lots to do.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And, of course, so we have a lot of listeners that are either yacht owners or, charter yachts all the time, every year. So obviously, I know lots of our listeners spend so much time on the Riviera and the Italian Riviera. And, what I'm always telling people when they're asking about, new different things to do, when they are spending time on land is to, go to some vineyards, drive around, rent a car, go to some of these small towns. It's so nice because you really find something new every time you go.
100%. And for us, we have lots of, last year, to be honest, we had something like 10,000 visitors that came to visit us. So it's quite a bit, whether it's with their own car or sometimes people take a taxi or something, or we even have people come with helicopters. So, there's all sorts of people. And, Monaco Yacht Show is I believe the third week of September. So we will be present we have been for a long time. We're present at Monaco Yacht Show. So a lot of people are there for either trying, I don't know, maybe some of it is just eye candy, just looking at the
always the latest and greatest.
Lots of people are buying things and so forth and chartering and so forth. So even if you're attending that, is a great time to come and visit. So I would highly recommend it for anything in this season from, let's say, Monaco Grand Prix, Cannes Film Festival, everything, Cannes Lions, all the way. There's a show in December for all the hotels of the world. There's lots of conventions going on.
Oh, so many. Well, because the weather's perfect, so it's the best place for a conference.
So if you're at a conference or a convention, please spend an extra day or two and come see us. Come visit. We'll take good care of you.
Sounds great. I know I will next time I'm there for sure. Well, thank you so much, Paul. This was excellent, so helpful, so exciting, and honestly, just so much to think about. I think rosé is so much fun. It's so, accessible but exciting. I mean, it's like literally the world's your oyster when it comes to rosé.
It is. You just gave me an idea. My new quote is no more rosé all day. Rosé is here to stay.
Ooh, that's a good one. I love it. Love it. Yeah, write that one down. Well, thank you so much. And again, of course, everybody, this is Paul Chevalier from Château d'Esclans, which, we all know from Whispering Angel, but they have lots of other wines and vintages and things like that to check out as well. We'll leave all the information below. But yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening. I'm your host, JQ. Be sure to follow me at JQ Louise on Instagram, TikTok, and all the other social media platforms. It was so much fun. Be sure to tune in next week for another great episode.